Wings of Fire has 25 protagonists, counting only the dragons and scavengers who have a part larger than a chapter in a book. Every protagonist has their fair share of fans, besides for, as it seems, Clay. The other day, I decided to try and find some Clay PMVs because I was interested in other people's takes on the Mudwing Kingdom. However, I was shocked when I could pretty much not find any serious content on him on YouTube that did not feature Peril heavily. Despite Clay being a protagonist of Wings of Fire, it appears he's left in the dust when it comes to popularity, with even Foe Slayer having more maps than him. I feel like all of this inattention is undeserved, and Clay has more depth than he appears to have on the surface. I'll be going over why I feel that today in this video. Before we get started, if you are new to this channel, please think about subscribing. I regularly post Wings of Fire and Warrior Cats content so you'll never be bored. And to my current subscribers, thank you so much for supporting me. I wouldn't have gotten here without y'all. Now without further ado, let's move on to the video. In the books, Clay is often stereotyped by other characters as dumb and hungry all the time. This is because he's a Mudwing, and so dragons wrongfully push their ideas of what a Mudwing is and should be onto him. The fandom often stereotypes him the same way. They add him into videos where the joke is that a character will eat anything, or add him in things that highlight how dumb he supposedly is. When they're not stereotyping him and reducing him down to being permanently hungry and dumb, they ship him with Peril. I understand why. Peril is a very interesting character. I love her myself. She had a heel face turn that is definitely one of the top 5 character arcs in the series. However, people often miss the part of the dynamic that makes them truly interesting, and also adds a lot of depth to Clay that people tend to ignore. During the start of their relationship, Clay fully believes that he is a monster. Similar to how Mudwing stereotypes were pushed onto Clay by the Guardians also pushed onto him that he was a monster. This was because he supposedly tried to break all the other dragonets' eggs before they hatched, which would have of course killed them. However, Clay fails to live up to those expectations. He might be able to fight, but he is not a monster, he is not a fighter at heart. He struggles to fight other dragons. For example, forgetting the very basic combat fact that Icewings can breathe ice. He doesn't tend to fight back when Kestrel attacks him as well. Despite that, Kestrel still tried pushing the stereotype onto him, and no matter the reassurances of the other dragonets, Clay convinced himself that secretly deep down within himself there was a monster. Peril is also a dragon who was told from a young age that she was monstrous. Her mother abandoned her because she was so much of a monster. She was only given the slightest bit of approval when she killed something, and that was from a young age. By the time she is 2, she knows that the only reason other dragons care about her is because of her capabilities to kill something. After she burns the eggs of the possible Skywing Dragonets of Destiny, she looks to Scarlet for encouragement because of that. So when Clay meets her 7 years later, this dragon, this Skywing, who both kills like a monster, who appears to be kind sometimes, such as bringing mud to him, he wonders if maybe he is a monster just like her, with something lurking just below the surface. Peril also sees herself in him, a monster, finally someone who knows how it feels to be one. When she learns that despite him being called a monster, he's able to have friends, she feels jealous. Why can't she be that way? It culminates in a dramatic battle between the two, where Clay rejects the idea of being a monster. He has a choice to make, to give in to the ideas dragons have about him, or to reject them and keep with his friends, and he rejects them, choosing to fight Peril. Peril being born a monster is brought into question. Sure, she was born with fire skills, but that doesn't make her evil. Peril's arguably the most evil when Chameleon causes her to lose her fire skills. Eventually, through the power of friendship, Peril is able to stop being the monster she was told she was and turned her life around. Clay being born a monster is later disproven as well. Turns out him trying to kill his siblings was just a Mudwing instinct to help hatch siblings. He was not truly a monster despite what everyone told him. Moving on, Clay's hungriness is often played up in the fandom. Even though it causes him to eat food without thinking of the side effects, he still shares his food with other dragonets and is not gluttonous. His hungriness is also spoofed on by his counterpart in the false dragonets of Destiny, Ochre. The false dragonets of Destiny are meant to be foils to the dragonets of Destiny. Ochre is gluttonous, and that means that Clay is not. Even though he eats a lot, he's not as bad as Ochre. If you want to make a joke about a dragon being hungry and dumb, do it to Ochre, not Clay, who is so much more depth than what people would ascribe to him. Clay is not just hungry and dumb, he's courageous as well. He throws himself in front of lava to protect Starflight, and even though he knew he was resistant to fire, lava is a whole lot hotter than fire on average. He could have burned himself to a crisp, and yet his first instinct was to protect his brother. Clay stands up for others. This isn't just with big things, but also the small things. He listens to Sunny when the other Dragonettes don't. He makes sure that she gets a say in the conversation by relaying her ideas to other Dragonettes, and is also noted to be the dragon who she cuddles with the most. It seems silly that the other Dragonettes have so much content when Clay is the heart of the group. Tsunami explains it the best in Lost Air, when the guards are debating whether or not to free Clay due to the oncoming hurricane. We can't fulfill the prophecy without Clay. He's the heart of our group. Without him, the rest of us will fall apart and we won't be worthy of any destiny at all. Clay doesn't have as dramatic a change in his life as the other Dragonettes of his arc do. Glory becomes a queen, Tsunami learns she's a princess, Starflight loses his sight, and Sunny wins the war. But that's okay, because Clay grounds the other characters, and also ourselves. He provides familiarity to both the Dragonettes of Destiny and us as the world and everything we know about it changes. I do admit that Clay does have some problems when it comes to his personality. After his book, he suffers from becoming a lot more of a flat character. This is because, unlike in the first book, we cannot see into his thought process, where most of the interesting stuff about him is. I'm decently sure no other dragon knows of his struggles of thinking he was a monster, besides Peril. Or at least no other dragon knew how much it worried him below the surface. The same problem also applies for Moon, who people often complain is boring post-Moon Rising. And that also applies to the feeling like a monster thing as well, as Moon feels like she's a monster thanks to her mother fear-mongering her about mind reading. Clay is given two things that could have made him more interesting, his leg and his siblings. However, the effects of his leg and limb aren't explored much, and his siblings aren't explored much either. We don't get to see the way in which Sora's actions affect him. We might get to see it if Tui finally decides to revisit Sora's story after 6 years of promising, but who knows if that will ever happen. Clay also could have been included in Escaping Peril. He's the subject of all of Peril's obsessions, however only manages to show up for 2 chapters. He could have been included by having him learn the situation in Sky Kingdom and rush over to try and figure out what's happening and to turn Peril good. Then again, Escaping Peril takes place in like a week. I doubt he'd hear of it instantly, but he could maybe have already been searching for her because she left without warning. Clay has much more depth than most fans give him credit for. He goes from a dragon thinking he's a monster to taking up the mantle of heart of the group, an arc that is often ignored in favor of making hungry and dumb jokes about him. I feel like the fandom needs to apologize to Clay for slandering him so much. Those are all my opinions on Clay. Do you think that Clay is underrated? Do you think Clay is flatter than I have described him to be? Comment down below. If you liked this video, feel free to subscribe. I make Wings of Fire and Warrior Cats videos pretty often, and your support means a lot to me. And to those who've already subscribed, thank you for your continued support. I wouldn't have gotten here without y'all. Peace, Rogan out.